Thank you for joining me for another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons, as I take up more of your questions in another segment of Ask Judy. This question is from Gina from Cologne, as in Cologne, Germany, who said, your videos are always so enjoyable to watch with so much interesting info, and you tell it in such an appealing way. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That was a very powerful and emotional episode, the one with the book burning, the firestorm. I love your love story. That was I was at that point dating David Spencer, and Aaron's conspiracy with Grandpa too, about being able to do the bathing suit portion of the competition. But the book burning scene is so touching and spot on too. After watching it in English first, I was curious how they would handle it on German TV, where this episode was shown today. Instead of, I wish there was someone speaking German here, or someone who could speak German here, John Boy said, someone should really read this. And instead of the English then, the German part, the German voice of Mrs. Brimmer just read 2 paragraphs of the Bible, the second one fitting very well too. But this way, a lot was lost to the German public and why it was Mrs. Brimmer who read it. But there probably wasn't a different way. That is fascinating. Thank you for sharing that, because I hadn't really thought about how the dubbing of episodes into foreign languages in some cases could impact what went on and the context of a scene. There are nuances in foreign languages, so I think sometimes things might get a little literally lost in translation, and maybe certain pieces of humor that may not translate in the same way. But I think that one's probably one of the few ones in the Waltons where a foreign language impacted something. That was really a key aspect of that particular scene. So yes, it's too bad that it was lost in that way. But as an actor, it also made me think about how we rely on the actors who are hired to dub our voices into foreign languages. And obviously they can hold the integrity of the scene and make it just as powerful, or, if they're not as strong an actor, it could weaken a scene. So we're always very grateful when really competent actors are brought in to do the dubbing, and that nothing is lost in translation in terms of the emotional and attitude impact of what's being said, because so much is tone of voice and the attitude of how something's delivered. So just think about how much could change if someone came in and thought they had a better idea of how it should play, or a different idea, and they decided to, instead of somebody being angry, they decided to have somebody be very soft-spoken and timid about it. And I don't think, I have never had somebody direct me in dubbing someone else's work. So that would be an interesting question. Maybe I'll see if I can get somebody on to talk about how that is and how that is directed when someone is being directed to dub something into a foreign language, how closely they ask them to interpret and be true to the original attitude and emotions of that. So, and for those of you, for someone like you, Gina, who has seen episodes in German and in English, perhaps you could comment back about how close the emotions and attitudes and stuff like that were portrayed in German. This one is from Karina Rowland, who said, thank you for another wonderful episode. Have you had a chance to contact the actor who played Ginny, Ben's daughter? Ben's daughter was played by twins when she was little, so I have not been in touch with them. And then when she was a little older, then she was played by Angel Rhodes, who I did run into at the event we did in Waco, I think 2 years ago or something like that. And so it was nice to see her again. And I may have her contact info, so maybe I'll see if I can get her to come join us. I don't know how much she remembers about doing the show, but we can find out. But then you said, would be wonderful to see how she's doing. So she seemed to be doing well. Also to hear from the actor who played your son while you were married to Jonesy. I have reached out to, that was David Friedman, and I have reached out to him, and he said he would come on, but we just haven't, I need to get back to him because we've both lost track of it and just haven't set it up. So thanks for the reminder. Then on another note, when you attend a meet and greet, is there a manager who coordinates the timing of the people so that the cast isn't bombarded all at once? Are there any rules we need to follow when attending a function? So usually the way those are set up is that we have tables set up that have different merchandise because people, want pictures signed, things like that, different things that people have. I have CDs. John Walmsley has CDs. Mary McDonough has her books. Cammie Kotler often has her ornaments, her Christmas ornaments. So there's different things like that. So we have tables where we have those things out so that people can see what merchandise they might be interested in purchasing, what they might like to have signed, things like that. So because of that, there's sort of a line, and when people enter, they kind of go through the line of tables, and there's not necessarily anybody moving people along. I think people are generally pretty aware and well-mannered about trying not to monopolize too much time if there's a long line. So they'll kind of, we'll chat for a few minutes. I'll sign or take a selfie or whatever it is they're asking to have done. And then they'll move along to the next table because you have a number of actors, the cast members that you're going to have a chance to interact with. And sometimes people are coming through and there's somebody in particular they want to see. Maybe they have a photo that everybody's signed except David Harper. And so they're like, hi, how are you? I already had you sign this. I'm just going to go have David sign it. So things like that happen. And so it kind of tends to run like that. If we are having an evening, a dinner or something like that, we try to get around to different tables to say hello to people. Sometimes people will, come over and talk with us, but people are pretty respectful, I would say. Every once in a while, you have somebody who, just sort of wants to monopolize a long amount of your time, get a hold of you and keep you captive. I understand it's an opportunity for someone to have a conversation with someone that they've watched and grown up with and seen, who's been in their living room every week. So it's understandable. So I would just say the main thing would just to have an awareness of other people and who else might not have had an opportunity to say hello and things like that. And just try and be respectful of the other people who are there to also try and have an opportunity in the brief period of time to say hello to each of us. So other than that, I would say no real rules except please be kind. And that's sort of it. So thank you for asking. This is from Stage Fright, who said, great questions and informative answer episode. Judy, you mentioned mics in this episode. Could you give us an intro to Mics 101? What were the different types of mics that were used on the Waltons, and when and how these mics were used on the various characters while shooting indoor and outdoor scenes? If you covered mics before, please add the link. I could not tell you what kind of mics were used, but I can tell you, like in terms of the name, the make, the model, things like that. But basically with mics, we worked with the boom mic, which was sort of on a little stand, and it could be... It was almost like a camera, it could be moved around and stuff like that and swiveled. And so someone would sit on that piece of equipment and work that. So that would be high up and overhead, just above where the actors were, and would cover the dialogue and would be tilted to face whichever actor was talking, and was just always designed to be up there and out of frame of the camera. Then we would have a pole mic. So somebody who holds a mic on a pole, and it hangs down, and they keep kind of shifting it to get it closest to whoever is speaking, or if it's in a close-up shot, then it just stays on that actor because that's the only sound that is really important that they record cleanly would be the audio for the person who's speaking in that close-up or the people who are in that who are on camera at that moment. So that mic, and that is just a person, one of the assistant sound people holding that mic, and they have like a little pack on, and they have earphones, little earbuds or earphones on, so they can hear what they are recording. Also, you have the sound engineer, the sound recorder, who sits at his little table with a little portable mixing board or recording board there, and he has his earphones on anytime we're recording, and he is making sure that there's clean sound going on all the time and that it is getting recorded. Then sometimes mics would be hidden, and these most of the mics had like kind of a foam sort of covering on them that served as sort of a filter for the sound, or probably to keep from like peaking or popping if somebody shouted, that it helped soften some of the sound, extra things like that. Sometimes in a scene, because they couldn't get enough mics close enough, they might hide a mic, like in a bush, or by some piece of furniture or whatever. So it would be and sometimes it was kind of hidden, so it was actually, if you knew it was there, like hidden in the bushes, you could go, hey, there was a mic in that bush. So things like that would happen. They'd just be wired up, and they'd cover the cords with if we were outside with dirt or whatever. If we were inside, they were maybe tucked behind a piece of furniture or under a rug. So things like that would happen to be able to get particular sound. And then there were the body mics. The body mics, I don't remember ever using body mics indoors. I think those were pretty much body mics were worn when we were outside, because a lot of times there were distances. You might see somebody walking up the road. They might have a long approach. John, or one of the boys crossing from the old mill to the front porch, and you have a long shot of it, or somebody walking up the road to the front of the house. So you couldn't get microphones, the big poles or the overhead, you couldn't get them close enough to the person. And if two people were walking and talking towards the front door, you wouldn't get any of that sound. So they put little a little mic pack that would be, tucked someplace in your clothes, and you'd have a little antenna that would be taped to the back of inside of your shirt, dress, whatever. And then the microphone would usually be someplace like right about, as close up to your mouth as possible, tucked in a shirt collar or under, a dress or something like that, so that they could record that. And it would have an on-off switch that would be battery operated. So they'd periodically have to come and change that. Sometimes we would wear like a Velcro sort of belt that had a little pouch, little pocket in it, and they'd put the microphone in there. So they could come and you could take those off at lunchtime or something like that. If you were done with a scene, they'd have you turn off your mic so that they'd save the battery. So things like that. So that was how the various different mics were used. A quick question here from Catherine Gleason, who said, since the girls and parents shared a bedroom, did you film, say, all the girls' bedroom scenes at one time, no matter where they presented in the episode? Yes. They wouldn't change the dressing of the set between scenes if we were shooting in there. They'd leave it all the parents' room, shoot everything in the parents' room, and then switch it up for the girls' room and shoot everything in the girls' room, or vice versa. So you are absolutely correct on that question. That's what I have for you for this segment of Ask Judy. If you enjoy these, please do hit like and subscribe. I'll see you next time for more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.